Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, December the 13th. A lot to talk about this morning. All signs continue to point to a powerhouse storm system that will slide across the southwestern states into the Gulf of Mexico region this weekend, produce a lot of rain and wind for Florida, the rest of the southeastern part of the nation, and then move up along the Atlantic seaboard, producing heavy rain, strong winds, probably from later Sunday into Monday, places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Again, a rain and wind event. There will be no cold air to speak of at the onset. Eventually, this storm system could very well pull in enough cold air for changeover to snow or ice in the upstate New York region, in the interior sections of New England. We'll focus in on that storm threat over the next few minutes. I wanted to kind of start off here with a kind of a longer range look here. This is a forecast map from last night's 0Z run of the GFS model at 250 millibars, way up in the top part of the atmosphere. Just the wind flow depicted here 2 weeks from now. This is way out there, but I just wanted to point out some of the things I'm monitoring as we get closer and closer to the official start of winter on December 21st. Jet streaks right here across the southern U.S. and the Pacific Ocean, kind of typical of an El Nino kind of a pattern in our winter outlook. And you can get to the winter outlook by going to the Arcfield Weather homepage, going to the upper right to the seasonal outlooks. We focus in on the El Nino and the impact, basically the activation of that southern branch of the jet stream. Now, what's interesting here is really two ways to keep the weather mild in the Mid-Atlantic region during a winter season, and all the snow lovers know and dread the thought of a ridge of the southeastern part of the U.S., what we call the Southeast Ridge. That certainly can lead to mild winters, or at least mild stretches of the winter season in the Mid-Atlantic region. That certainly does not appear to be in evidence over the next few weeks. The Southeast Ridge is not the problem for the Mid-Atlantic region in terms of mild conditions or lack of snowfall. Another source of mild air is certainly the Pacific Ocean. Anytime you have a jet streak pouring mild air into the west coast of the U.S., it usually just translates across the nation into warmer than normal conditions, and that's another thing to look for during an El Nino winter, but really during any winter. Is the Southeast Ridge is one thing to look for if you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, for example, or Pacific Ocean, milder air moving across the nation. Now, certainly we see this jet streak here. Again, this is 2 weeks out there, but I just kind of wanted to illustrate some of the things I like to monitor this time of the year. Now, one of the ways you can actually prevent mild air from the Pacific Ocean from making it into the central or eastern U.S. is if you pump up a ridge, an upper level ridge across the west coast of the U.S. or the west coast of Canada, and that is indeed on the table here. And we'll take a look now at one of the teleconnection indices that I'd like to look at, called the PNA, Pacific North America Index, is suggesting that this ridge along the west coast of the U.S. or west coast of Canada will indeed strengthen over the next couple of weeks. So that could be play a role of preventing that mild air from flooding from west to east across the nation. Instead, it'll kind of be diverted up north and then maybe back around, but certainly not the impact in the Mid-Atlantic region, for example, if we can pump up that ridge along the west coast of the U.S. and Canada. And here is the forecast for this particular teleconnection index. Again, it's called the Pacific North America Index. It tells us, gives us some information as to the temperature and pressure patterns across the eastern Pacific Ocean, western part of North America. Generally, this time of the year, when it's in positive territory, that gives support to the idea that a ridge, a high pressure ridge, will intensify places like the west coast of the U.S., west coast of Canada, and that generally is more favorable for colder air masses to make their way into the central and eastern U.S., and it can act to divert Pacific Ocean mild air from going way up to the north and not directly into the eastern half of the nation. Well, here's the forecast in red over the next couple of weeks. This takes us right to the end of December. Indeed, not only slightly positive right now, but it tends to increase its positive nature as we get closer and closer to the end of December. So indeed, that's something we'll monitor over the next week or two, the development of a ridge out in the western part of the North America. Again, that'll have an impact on an influx of Pacific Ocean air into the U.S. It's something we'll monitor over the next couple of weeks as we get closer and closer to the official start of the winter season. Well, let's now get back to the forecast maps, and before we talk about the upcoming Powerhouse storm system, I wanted to kind of emphasize again what I've said a few times in these videos, that the importance of the model run time. 0Z and 12Z model runs feature the very latest updated upper atmosphere data. We still collect this kind of data through the usage of radiosonde balloons, not only around the U.S. but around the world, fed into those model runs at 12Z and 0Z. The 6Z and the 18Z runs do have the latest surface observations, but they have stale radiosonde data, basically 6-hour-old radiosonde data, and upper air data is absolutely critical to the performance of all computer forecast models. It really dictates everything that goes on at the surface level. So it's very important to keep that in mind, especially if you're a snow lover in, let's say, the Mid-Atlantic region. If you see a snow map out there on the internet, or you take a look at it yourself from a 6Z run or an 18Z run, just be careful, because it's indeed a 6Z run and an 18Z run, and it has stale radiosonde data. This is from last night's 6Z model run of the GFS for the next 10 days, the snow map. And take a look at that. If you're in that I-95 corridor region, you can get quite excited by taking a look at this. But again, be very careful with those 6Z and 18Z maps, and do not believe it, basically, in my opinion, unless it's confirmed by the next model run, the 12Z model run in this case. This, by the way, is compared to this 0Z model run for the next 10 days in that I-95 corridor region, no snow at all. The 6Z run kind of goes crazy with more than 6 inches in that purple up and down the I-95 corridor region. I certainly would not believe this unless the 12Z run comes in. And indeed, that can happen once in a while. A trend is picked up by a 6Z run, so it may be different than a 0Z run, but I don't buy this, again, unless it's confirmed by the upcoming 12Z run, which will have the latest upper air data. This is what I would favor right now as a solution. Well, now let's focus in on this upcoming storm, and it's really getting underway already out across the southwestern states. We're looking here at the vorticity maxima as depicted by the 0Z run of the GFS, and here it is already sliding into the southwestern part of the U.S. And we'll see in a moment that there's a northern branch system that will play a big role. It appears to me that they are likely to phase together, and that will help to form a very, very powerful storm system over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico that will continue as a very strong storm system up the Atlantic seaboard. Here it is again early this morning on Wednesday, December 13th, and we're pushing to the east here, causing some significant snowfall in places like Colorado, New Mexico, especially the southern half of Colorado, the northern half of New Mexico, in those higher elevation locations. This can result in a lot of snowfall. Then it drives to the south and east, and we'll see here by the time we get to Friday evening, we're starting to see a northern branch system also playing a role here, diving to the south and east, and they really phase together nicely here later on in the weekend. This is the midday on Saturday. A piece of that energy goes into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and we'll see the surface maps in a moment. Very strong low pressure will develop over the Gulf of Mexico region. And here we go into the latter part of the weekend, kind of a coalescing of these two systems, the northern branch and the southern branch, yielding one powerhouse storm system for Florida, for the southeast U.S., and it looks like right up along the Atlantic seaboard. And again, initially, no cold air to work with in the Mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S., but That can change, as we'll see in a moment here on the GFS model run. And here we go. And this does some interesting things. By the time we get to Monday, you have one kind of deep upper level low that is a kind of a phasing together those two systems, the northern branch and the southern branch, yielding one strong upper level low, and it kind of sits and spins, maybe retrogrades a little. That means kind of moves to the west instead of the normal west to east in this part of the hemisphere. And here we go. We may be dealing with this not only late Sunday, Sunday night in the Mid-Atlantic region, but maybe into Tuesday as well. This is the Tuesday map, and all the way into Wednesday of next week. This particular model run has some impact in the eastern third of the nation all the way into the middle part of next week. And again, no cold air to work with here in the northeastern part of the nation, at least initially. Now let's take a look at the surface maps from the 0Z run of the GFS. And again, I emphasize the 0Z run of the GFS. Quiet, relatively cold, moderately cold across the Great Lakes, the Midwest, the Northeast today. And we'll go forward here. Already we're seeing some snow here across the Colorado highlands and northern New Mexico. Some areas in northern New Mexico, those high elevation locations, certainly have 6 to 12 inches on the table from this particular system. As again, we saw that vorticity maximum slide right across the southwestern U.S. over the next 12, 24, 36 hours or so. And by the time we get to the weekend, this is Friday night, Saturday morning, we have developing low pressure, intensifying low pressure over the central Gulf of Mexico, rain already into the peninsula of Florida by the first half of the upcoming weekend. Here's a reflection at the surface of that northern branch upper level system producing some snow across the northern plains. Again, an upper level wave here will kind of phase together with that southern branch wave to form one strong system. And here we go. By the time we get to second half of the weekend, Sunday, this is kind of a tropical-like storm system for the Florida Peninsula, for the other parts of the southeast U.S. By that I mean a lot of rain and a lot of wind. Even still some very warm ocean temperature, Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures, and the Southwest Atlantic still quite warm as well. So indeed, kind of a tropical-like storm coming up for Florida and the rest of the southeast U.S. This is Sunday morning. And notice here these lines of equal pressure, these black lines here represent lines of equal pressure, isobars. The tighter that gradient, the stronger the winds. And the pressure gradient between this intensifying low pressure and high pressure that's pushing off into the North Atlantic will tighten with this particular storm system by the late weekend, and certainly the early part of next week, resulting in a lot of wind, maybe damaging wind gusts here with this storm system. Take a look at that pressure gradient here. By the time we get to Sunday night, rain pushes in to the Mid-Atlantic region. Again, no cold air to speak of initially here, all rain as it pushes northward into the Mid-Atlantic region, even the northern Mid-Atlantic at this particular time. Again, we talked about the fact that this may sit and spin for a few days here. This is now Monday morning. Still, no cold air at this particular time, but this time of the year, of all times of the year, anytime you get low pressure moving towards the Mid-Atlantic or the northeast U.S. coastline, it can indeed pretty quickly draw in cold air from Canada. And I do believe that that is on the table here for upstate New York, interior, higher elevation locations of New England, that enough cold air can come in for a changeover to snow or ice during this upcoming event. Here we go all the way into Monday night and Tuesday. And notice here, I believe this is a correct solution here by the GFS in that it's starting to draw in some colder air from the north and west, from southeastern Canada into at least the northwestern part of the Mid-Atlantic and interior sections of New England. So just be careful here, upstate New York, interior New England. This particular storm could end up producing some snow or ice. And here we go, all the way out to Tuesday night and even Wednesday morning. This system still having an impact on the Mid-Atlantic region, even the northeast U.S. as it sits and spins off the Mid-Atlantic coastline. And this particular time period may start to weaken after it reaches a peak, maybe a couple of days before this, which is a forecast for Wednesday morning. By the way, that solution for it to kind of slow down or sit and spin is certainly feasible. We have a lot of blockiness in the atmosphere with lots of lows and highs, and there could be kind of a blocking pattern setting up that will inhibit this from moving very quickly out into the open waters of the Atlantic. So again, powerhouse storm system looks like it will develop over the Gulf of Mexico this weekend and then right up along the Atlantic seaboard, beginning to impact the mid-Atlantic region as early as late Sunday into Sunday night with rain and wind, and that will continue on Monday as well. Eventually enough cold air could be drawn in to cause some snow or ice upstate New York, interior New England, and in the near term some decent snowfall across places like Colorado and New Mexico. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.